Hello guys, this is IP Tech here, and in this video I'll be doing something different. So I won't be doing my usual review, and instead I decided to do a gaming PC build for you guys. So this is mainly a 1080p 60 frames per second gaming build, so it's designed to run most new games at the most AAA titles at 60 frames at 1080p. So you can probably handle like 1440p, but the frame rate's gonna be lower, maybe 30, even less. So it's up to you how you want to use it, but my recommendation is, if you build this, make sure you game at 1080p and you can get pretty good frame rates from 50 to 60 FPS. So let's get on with it. So I'm using parts picker for this, so I can get a rough idea of the price, which is, it's less than £500, so about 490, but depending on what you get or where you get from, it's gonna vary. So, and also the estimated wattage, so this is gonna give you an idea of how many watts the system is gonna be using, so you can decide on what supply you want to use. So if our system right now is using about less than 400 watts, so a 430 watts power supply will be good, but I've decided, as you can see, I've decided on a 500 watt supply. That's just for future proofing it. So if you in the future you want to upgrade the graphics card or the CPU, then you have room, if you have room to grow, and if those components that you want to buy have a higher watt expectancy, or if you want to get dual 2 R9 270Xs, then you're going to need more than 430 watts. So that's why I've got the 500 watt power supply. So let's get on with. So the first component, the main one, the CPU. And something else to note, I've most of my parts, like all the parts, are mainly from Amazon, so the price is a bit different to what you see here, as these are from a bit different manufacturers. But I would suggest getting all the parts from the same manufacturer, but if you want to go with another supplier, not manufacturer, you can choose whichever one is the cheapest and go with that. So okay, the first one, the CPU. I've gone with the AMD FX 6300 series because it's a very good CPU, very good price, £75 as you can see, and 6-core CPU, so you get 6 cores, which is great for gaming nowadays. It'll be the perfect for gaming and 3.5 gigahertz. So the stock clock speed is not bad, but with this CPU you have overclocking headroom, so you can overclock it over past 4 gigahertz with to about 4.4 if you use a aftermarket cooler like I've chosen, which is the the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo, which is one of the most recommended coolers you can ever have. So okay, let's go. So as you can see, I've got my CPU from Amazon. As you can see, there's a price difference. This here is £76, but that is it's less than £2 difference, so I wouldn't worry about that. And you can see some of the features that it's got. So it's got a turbo clock speed of 4.1 GHz, but again, that's probably going to be with the stock cooler. You probably get this with the stock cooler. So if you get an aftermarket one, you can go way above that to 4.4, even 4.5 maybe. It's got enough level 3 cache, 8 megabytes, that should be enough. 6 megabytes level 2 cache, so it's good. But socket AM3, so this is going to be important when you choose a motherboard. You have to make sure it's got this socket so it can fit. 90 watts, so it's not very power consuming, relatively less power than other CPUs which use 120, and other features. It gets good reviews on Amazon, so you have so that is it for the CPU. The next part is the cooler that I've been talking about. This is the most recommended cooler you will ever get, and for the price is very good. So I would very recommend this cooler if you want to overclock your CPU up to 4.4 GHz. Okay, so you can get this from Amazon as well. Okay, moving on. The next part is the MSI motherboard. So I've gone with this MSI 970A G33 ATX motherboard because it supports our CPU. It's got an AM3 Plus socket, and it can support our GPU as well. It's got a PCI Express slots. So, and it's very cheap as well. As you can see, it's only $45.95, which is very good price for a motherboard of this quality. As you can see, it's got automatically overclock and unlock hidden CPU cores in 1 second. So it's designed for overclocking and unlocking any CPU cores that you want. It's got graphic user interface with touchscreen, so you can support touchscreen. So if you have Windows 8, if you're using a touchscreen monitor, then you can use it perfectly. You can use the graphical interface with it. So another thing is the BIOS is you can use your mouse in the BIOS, which is very good. And it says instant boost system performance up to 248%, which sounds a lot, but you know, I wouldn't really trust these statistics. So you see some of this. OC Genie 2, most powerful and easy overclocking to control, implemented on MSI board. So very good for overclocking, as we want to overclock our system to get the most performance out of it. So it's a very good motherboard. Okay, moving on. The memory. So this is another key feature of the build. You want to get, nowadays 8 GB will be enough for any game. So we don't need any more than 8 GB to game, really. Even AAA titles not going to use more than 8 GB. If you want more RAM and like 16 gigs, you can still get 16 gigs for gaming, but that is more towards video editing, video creation, as those software like Adobe Premiere use more of the RAM. So but for gaming, 8 GB here. And then what we have here is the Kingston Fury White series, 8 GB. So it's 2 DIMMs, 2 times 4 GB DIMMs, which is the recommended. So you can use a dual channel and get pretty good speeds. And this is a 1866 MHz DDR3 RAM, which is it's faster than the 1600 MHz RAM, but as you can see, that's not really that important in games. But for the price, which is, it's a very cheap price, £60. You probably won't be able to get some 1600 megahertz RAMs cost more than this. So I would suggest this if you want. But you can use any 8 GB memory that's at least 1600 megahertz. Okay, let's go to you can find this in Amazon as well. And you have different color options. So if you don't want the white series, you can choose black, blue, red. The price may vary for those, but and on 16 GB. So if you want 2 times 8 then slots, then you can use that. The next thing is the memory, the storage device. So ideally you want an SSD, but in this build, since we're aiming for £500, so we want to keep cheap, like so that's why we're using not a solid, we're not using an SSD, we're using a hard drive, so we can keep the price low. As you can see, on 40 quid for a terabyte. It's a Western Digital Caviar Blue, so this will be good for storing your games on. It's not the fastest CPU, is not as fast as SSD by far, but it's got enough storage to keep all the games you want, and it's 72,000 RPM with 7,200 RPM, which is the lowest you want to go. And in the future, if you want, you can get a 120 GB SSD and just install Windows on it, and your machine will run perfect. So as prices of SSD are going down, they will become more affordable, so you can choose that if you want. And okay, this is yeah, you can get this from Amazon as well. It's a very good performance. Okay, next part is the second most important thing, I would say, after the CPU, or the for gaming, it's the most important thing for gaming, as this is what's going to run your games. It's the GPU, of course, the video card. For this choice, for this build, I chose the Sapphire Radeon R9 270X. It's 2GB, got their dual-X cooling solution, and it's 130 quid for the price. It's a very good graphics card. It's gonna run all the new games at 1080p at 60 frames per second, and it's very good priced as well. So the other suggestion I would have, if you don't want this an AMD graphics card, you can go with the NVIDIA, which is, you can get the GTX 760, I believe, which is more expensive, but you get better performance, like a couple of frames better performance, but for our build this is perfect, as we want to keep it £500, so this card is the best you probably can get for 1080p 60 frames per game, but 60 frames per second at that price. So if you can, as I said before, you can even get two if you want. If you're into two-way crossfire, you can do that and run basically all the games at high frames per second. And with two-way SLI, you probably run more than 1080p, like 1440p. So it's up to you. This is just a suggestion. Okay, and yeah, that's basically the best graphics cards you can get for that price. Okay, the next thing is the case. That is also very important, as that's where you put all your components in. I've gone with the Fractal Design. The Definer R4 from Fractal Design, which is the best case for a gaming build. For someone that's new to gaming, this will be perfect. It's got very good flow, very good airflow, very nice simplistic design. It is on the expensive side, like £70, but I would suggest that if you really want a good case, I'll suggest this case. It's the best case for a beginner. Of course, you can get cheaper cases. There are a couple of cheaper cases, like for instance, you can get instead of this, there's a one I would actually more recommend is, sorry, let's go to Amazon and I'll show you. It's from Corsair, the new Corsair Carbide series, the Spec 01, Carbide Spec 01, which is, in my opinion, for the price, the best case you can get if you want something good. So Carbide Spec 01, as it's much cheaper than, it's probably, like, as you can see, it's got different colors. This is the red version, so if you want a red build, this one is 38 quid, which is about half price, like just over half price, half of the price of the Fractal Design, and it's a very good case. You see, you can install two fans in the front with a nice big side window that you can view all your components in. It's got two USB 3.0 and a USB 2.0 at the front. It's got a very nice layout inside. So you have, on the side, you do have the cutouts for your cable management. You have these driverless slots for your hard drive and SSD, and you have bottom mounted PCU which is gonna make it look nicer. And also on the bottom, you can't see in these pictures, but on the bottom you have filtered intake, so you can, your PSU doesn't get any dust in it. So if you don't want to go with the Fractal Design, which is 70 quid, you can go with this case, which I'll probably, for someone that wants to budget, a very budget gaming, then this will be the perfect case for you. And lastly, last but not least, is the power supply. What's gonna power your whole system? So in this build, I chose the Corsair Builder Series 500 watt PSU, sorry, as it's the 500 watts. I already told you that it's because you want future proofness. So if you chose the 430 watts and you wanted to upgrade, get a dual GPU configuration, then that's going to be a problem. But if you have a 500 watt power supply, it should be enough to power even maybe 600 would be, I would recommend more the 600 watt supply for dual GPU think configuration, but this 500 watt PSU will be perfect for any system, any beginner. It's a very good price, like 46 from Mario PC, but for about 50 quid you can get on Amazon, and it's 80 plus bronze certified, which means it's going to be very power efficient to be the low noise, so you won't get, so you see, it's Amazon 55 quid in Amazon, which I would still get that. And it's not modular, so it's fixed cables, which could be a downside, but there is a semi-modular cable option, which basically has you a few choices. So you still have some fixed cables, but you also have these additional cables that you can install. So whichever one, it's the semi-modular one is only not that much more expensive. So if you want a semi-modular PSU, then you can go for that. And that is it for the system build. That is it, all the components. So as I said before, this is just suggestion. It's not you don't have to get the exact same configuration or from this Amazon the exact same place. You can swap a few things like graphics cards. You can go with a more expensive one if you want to get very good frame rates, like above 60 frames per second at 1080p. Go with the GTX 760 card. It's gonna run you a bit more, but it's gonna give you more frames per second, which in my opinion it's not enough, wouldn't justify the price. Or you can use a different CPU. You can get a cheaper CPU like the Athlon 2 X4 CPU with 760K CPU, which is cheaper, and it's a 4-core CPU. It's gonna come cheaper, like £50, and it's very good for overclocking. So you can get that above 4 GHz easily, and with an aftermarket cooler like the Cooler Master Hyper Evo one. So, or you can get a more expensive one, which from AMD as well, the FX 8320 or 50, which are both 8-core CPUs. So if you want more cores, then that's an option, but that they're gonna be 130 quid. So it's up to you to decide. Or you can go with an Intel, like an Intel i5 4670K, which is one of the best CPUs for gaming from Intel. For the price, it is relatively expensive compared to AMD, which is, as it comes across, at 150 I believe. Yeah, £150. But if that's your choice, just take this as a suggestion for something. If you're a beginner and you want to build your first system and you want to run everything at 1080p at 60 frames per second, then I'd suggest getting these components, but it's up to you. You can change a few things, get from different places, get a cheaper price. So this is just a guideline, and this is it for the video. So thank you guys for listening, and make sure you like the video. Make sure you click the thumbs up button below if you like the video, or subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and leave a comment if you think if you have any suggestions for like changing a different part that I have not mentioned in this video. So, and thank you for listening again.